Hello, today we have Rick Vergin, the CEO of Mosaic Telecom, and he's going to talk to us about rural telephony in the USA. So Rick, may I ask you to start by presenting a bit Mosaic Telecom?
Sure. Mosaic Telecom has been in the telecom business since 1907, so we've been providing service for over 100 years. On the wireline side, we provide wired telephony, broadband services, cable TV, and we entered the cellular market, or the wireless market, in November of 2009. So we're a small provider in northwest Wisconsin. We have 60 employees and 8 office locations, retail office locations for our cellular service.
Mm-hmm. So can you tell us a bit more about how the mobile market is in the US?
It is, as we had talked before, somewhat segmented. You have 4 large providers that have 90% or more of the customers. AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, and Sprint have millions of customers on the wireless side, and there's probably another 200 providers that have service to less than 50,000 subscribers, probably more in the 10,000 subscriber range, providing services to mainly rural areas that the large companies don't provide service to. And that's where we come in, and that's why we're providing wireless service as well.
So what is the situation in Wisconsin regarding mobile telephony? What is the coverage?
Coverage is spotty because of the terrain is 50% wooded or forest and 50% farmland, and it's really a lot of rolling hills. So with the spectrum that we're using, it's difficult to, it's almost a line of sight technology. So if someone's over a hill or in a valley or behind a lot of forest, it's very difficult to get signal to them. And really it's not economically feasible to cover 100% of the area with in-home penetration with macro cells.
So you have lots of area which are not covered.
That's very true. In my presentation, I had a map of Wisconsin that showed AT&T's coverage, and I would have to say 25% of the state wasn't covered because there's very few people living there. There's plenty of spectrum available, licenses available, but the providers that have the licenses for that area have chosen not to spend their money there because of the number of customers per square mile is so low.
So what are the challenges for a mobile operator to offer mobile services in rural areas?
I think for small operators, it's the economies of scale that we don't have. We've struggled for over a year to get a femto product that is in the spectrum that we operate in, because none of the large providers that I mentioned before operate in that spectrum or operate in that spectrum with a femto cell. So it's very difficult for us to get a manufacturer to manufacture devices that will put in an order for thousands instead of hundreds of thousands or millions. And so that's a real big impediment as far as a small provider goes.
So you mentioned that actually you have decided to roll out femtocell technology.
That's correct.
To offer mobile services.
That's correct. It was part of our original plan to offer the femtocell with our original offering. It's just that we've had such a problem getting the devices that go in the customer's home that are on our frequency. The issues of being able to cover a rural area, a hard to cover area, a mountainous area, or a hilly area with macro cells is very difficult, both economically to put up enough towers to cover all those areas sufficiently, as well as it's hard to get permits to put towers up. It's hard to buy land. Not everyone wants a tower on their land or near their area, so that all is all hurdles that you have to get over to put up lots of cell sites in order to cover those areas. So we feel that the femtocell can really offer customers that live in some of these remote areas a way to have their phone, their cellular handset being used almost 100% of the time because they spend so much time in their home. So we have a lot of customers that have cellular service from any provider, including us, that the cell service works in a community or works along a travel corridor that doesn't work in their home. So it really cuts down on the amount of time that they can use their phone, and it cuts down on the amount of things that they can do with their phone, not having service in their home.
So you are deploying mainly in femtocell because you are going to offer to you want to offer to your customers voice services?
Primarily voice. I mean, there's a lot of people in our service area that have no cellular coverage at all in their home.
Yeah.
We have a consultant that lives near the state capital of Wisconsin, who is a businessman, has no service at home at all. On the weekends, he drives a mile down the road so he can get service, get his voicemails, and get his messages on his cell phone, and then drives back home. Because people call him thinking that he has coverage at home, but he doesn't. So they leave messages or they send him emails, and that's what he has to do on Saturday and Sunday on the weekend, is drive down the road, get his messages, and then drive back home again. So a customer like that is a prime candidate for a femtocell. He may not have coverage outside of his home, and for that mile where he has to drive to get coverage for a macro cell, but because of the femto in the home, he's still going to have coverage about 99% of the time, the amount of time that he's home, and then the amount of time where he gets to a macro cell.
So it's really a question of expanding the footprint of 2G services rather than 3G data services.
It would be in our particular case, we only offer 3G, so it would be 3G voice that we would be offering. And but yeah, number one is just get voice connectivity and the services that go along with it. But number two, I think it opens the door for people like this consultant I was talking about to buy more services, because they work 99% of the time now instead of 50% of the time. So maybe they don't need a home phone anymore. Maybe they don't need a home broadband connection anymore, other than to operate the femtocell. So there's a lot of things that they may not need because of that, and then have the ability to utilize their phone services.
So why did you decide to go for femtocell technology versus other technologies?
The only other technology that we thought that would fit the bill would be a repeater.
I heard about that, yeah.
And there's two things that the femto has that a repeater doesn't have. One is it's the low cost. Typically repeaters are much more expensive than what a femtocell is. Femtos are in the $100 range, where repeaters can be several $1,000 range. And the other thing, the repeater needs to have some signal in order to operate. So if it doesn't have any signal at all,
it has to be connected to the macro cell somehow.
So if you are going to have a repeater in my consultant's home, for instance, he's not going to get any service because he's a mile away from where the macro cell covers. So it doesn't work in that situation. And we have a lot of folks that are in that situation where they have virtually no coverage. And even if they have a small amount of coverage, repeaters basically repeat what they're getting in. So if you have poor coverage coming in, you may have 4 or 5 bars on your phone, but the connectivity out is still poor.
And so how do you backhaul the traffic from the femtocell?
In our wired line areas, which is only about 5% of our wireless footprint, we use our wired facilities. And probably, I'm going to take a guess, that 90% of the customers that would be interested in a femto have access to some form of wired broadband. Where they don't have access to wired broadband, we have a wireless fixed broadband service that we operate on LTE that
Yeah.
uses LTE to provide a DSL-like service or a broadband service in the home. So we would use 4G to backhaul our 3G handsets that are in the home.
Okay, so you could. Okay, so this would be that would be the other way around, rather than using a DSL connection, is using
That's correct.
4G
Right.
wireless technology.
We can also offer a wired home phone with that wireless broadband connection by using VoIP, which we're doing today. We provide a fixed wireless broadband connection, and then the customer plugs their wired phone into that connection, and they have dial tone and can make phone calls there.
Yeah, because there were a lot of talk at the conference about actually backhauling over DSL or a proper IP Ethernet connection, and this is going in Africa. This is a kind of is an issue in the sense that broadband penetration, fixed broadband penetration, is very, very low.
And
So there need to be a kind of wireless backhaul.
Right, and that is something we thought about, is that a lot of places that are rural and that don't have good cellular coverage probably are the places that don't have good broadband penetration or don't have broadband availability as well. In the U.S., we were able to secure a license in the 700 megahertz band, which has a lot better propagation than the
Higher bands.
2.1 gigahertz band that we're using for our 3G or for our AWS. So that, coupled with the fact that some of the units that we have can use an outside antenna to be wired down to the unit inside, you couple those things together and you can provide a pretty healthy broadband, the wireless broadband service to inside the home to really help enhance the handset coverage, 3G handset coverage inside the home.
Okay, thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you.